John Smith and John Dalziel, we're here in an exhibition of a set of graphics that were seminal moments in both your careers. It marks the first Salvation Army Red Shield appeal with the tagline, "Thank God for the Salvos." How did this begin?
In 1969, the Red Shield appeal was being newly established and structured in the Australian community. We'd made several attempts in an amateurish way to promote the Red Shield appeal, and then Harry Goffin, Colonel Harry Goffin and I, we decided that because there was a man in the Salvation Army who was in advertising, he should come and advise us.
So I'm called in to the Colonel's office, go back as a relatively junior executive in the company, and I approach the creative director and tell him I've got the Salvos wanting to raise money. I'm willing to work after hours on it for nothing. Oh, take all the time you want. And we must be involved in this as an agency. Let's go and talk to the boss. So we talked to the owner of the agency. He was very involved with a man he called creative consultant, but really directed the creative output of the agency, and that's Les Mason. And Les was talking with Ian about the key things, and they sent out a copywriter with John Smith, who was then a captain in the army, to look at the work of the army. And the captain came back with Eric, and Eric said, what would these homeless, these abused women, these children do if there were no Salvos to care for them? Half an hour later, he lays on my desk, "Thank God for the Salvos."
What sort of impact did Les Mason have on both of you?
When I met Les Mason, I immediately recognised I was standing in the presence of a giant who knew what he was talking about when it came to message making.
The very fact that the National Gallery of Victoria has chosen Les Mason's work to kick off this whole idea of what the importance of graphic art is speaks for itself. So it's no coincidence that when the Salvation Army wanted a campaign and we happened to have a Les Mason on hand willing to give his talent, the campaign had such a dramatic effect.
Les began to develop the imagery for the campaign, and this was not simply the old-fashioned let's show a photograph of a Salvation Army officer doing something nice.
One of the first projects that the advertising agency led was to gather leading photographers, filmmakers, to go and capture what the need was. And I can remember going to the Victoria Market late one night with a copywriter, and we saw this bloke in a box. And we knocked on the box and said, "Hey, you got any needs, anything we can help you with?" He said, no, who are you? We said, "We're the Salvation Army. Would you mind if we took your photograph?" And that photograph became the iconic image of the first Thank God for the Salvos campaign. And when Les Mason put his ideas together, there was Jimmy, but there were daisies growing out of his hair. And of course that was very symbolic of what the army was trying to do, taking people where they were at and giving them new hope.
And those graphic challenges, John Dalziel, just went on from there. Some of the images proved quite confronting. One image of a man with the chains wrapped around his head. How did Salvation Army leadership initially respond to this?
Every time it got back to the fact that, look, here's a top international graphic artist, and he has captured the essence of what the Army's trying to do. We want to concentrate on the need. Here's the need expressed in a way that no one photograph can do.
What sort of impact do you think that image, that self-image, had on the Salvation Army itself?
We had to spend a lot of time trying to educate the Salvationists. And I remember having to churn out stuff to go into divisional newsletters, and I used to write front pages for the war cry and trying to say what this Thank God for the Salvos thing was.
Over the long term, it had a profound effect on Salvationists because they'd knock on a door and all of a sudden people had the money ready to give them. I think for many Salvationists, it woke them up to the fact that brass bands and songsters were not what the army was about. In fact, it was about the work that we were doing.
Do you think we could do with a refreshed reminder of that these days? Both in terms of the public campaign and the internal understanding?
I am disappointed that the cut-through and the ability to use the latest in visual arts is not happening now. We're not out there in the media telling it like it really is. The need was never greater than it is today. And it is a sad reflection of our time that the number of homeless has grown since that first Red Shield appeal. The number of women who are being abused is greater now than it was back 45 years ago. And we are not at the forefront of the message anymore because there are other organisations that are doing what we once did all by ourselves. And we've got to recognise we must work with others to say what the need is and be prepared to change the way in which we do our business.